Welcome to another deep dive.
Okay.
Today we are going to be tackling a question that is both complex and deeply personal.
Right.
What does it truly mean to understand autism?
hmm
And to help us unpack this, we're going to be exploring three unique perspectives.
Okay.
Parents raising autistic children,
Right.
autistic individuals themselves,
Yes.
and the professionals who work with them.
Sounds good.
Our guide for this journey is going to be Olga Bogdashina's insightful book, Theory of Mind and the Triad of Perspectives on Autism and Asperger Syndrome.
Okay.
We'll be focusing on chapters 5, 6, and 7 in particular.
Gotcha.
So ready to dive in?
Absolutely. It's going to be fascinating to see how these perspectives intertwine and potentially challenge some of our preconceived notions about autism.
Okay, so let's start with the parent's perspective.
Right.
I can only imagine what it must be like to receive an autism diagnosis for your child.
Yeah.
Even today, there's still so much misunderstanding surrounding autism.
Mm.
It must be an emotional roller coaster.
It absolutely is, and Olga Bogdashina captures this beautifully in her book.
Right.
She shares the story of Tito, a nonverbal autistic boy, whose father, after reading an article about autism, started to doubt his son's ability to communicate.
Oh, wow. That must have been incredibly difficult for Tito, but also for his mother, who had a completely different perspective.
Exactly. Tito's mother believed deeply in her son's ability to communicate and grow, and she refused to let the doubts of others define his potential.
Right.
Her story really highlights the resilience of parents navigating this journey.
Yeah.
They face a range of emotions:
Okay.
grief, confusion, frustration, but also this fierce determination to understand and support their child.
And that determination often leads parents on a search for effective treatments, right?
Yes.
They're willing to try anything to help their child.
Yes, and it's understandable. However, the landscape of autism treatments is vast
Right.
and often controversial.
Oh, okay.
Take applied behavioral analysis, or ABA, for example. It's widely used, but also heavily debated.
Right.
Some view it as incredibly helpful, while others raise serious concerns about its potential for harm.
So there's no easy answer there.
No, it's not at all.
It sounds like navigating the world of autism treatments can be a real minefield for parents.
It can be, and Bogdashina doesn't shy away from that.
Okay.
She talks about this desperate search for a cure,
Right.
the willingness to try anything,
Yeah.
and the heartbreaking reality that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
I imagine that can be incredibly frustrating for parents,
It is.
especially when they're bombarded with conflicting information and opinions from all sides.
Exactly.
It's hard to know who to trust or what path to follow.
And this is where Bogdashina brings up a really interesting point.
Okay.
She highlights the controversy surrounding ABA,
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging both its successes
Right.
and the potential for harm.
Okay.
She even shares a story about an organization founded by families whose children were traumatized by ABA programs.
Wow, that's heartbreaking. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What kind of trauma are we talking about?
Sure. So this organization is called CIRA, and they were formed by parents who felt that ABA, as it was being implemented in some cases, was actually doing more harm than good.
What were their specific concerns?
Well, one of the major concerns was the use of aversive techniques.
Aversive techniques. Can you explain what that means?
Basically, it involves using unpleasant stimuli to discourage certain behaviors.
So like punishment.
Sort of, but it can be more subtle than that.
Okay.
For example, some ABA programs might withhold food or affection as a way to get a child to comply with certain demands.
That seems incredibly harsh. I can see how that could be traumatizing for a child, especially one who might not understand why they're being treated that way.
Exactly. And that's why CIRA and other critics of ADA argue that it's crucial to use these techniques with extreme caution, and only under the guidance of highly trained professionals who understand the potential risks.
So it sounds like a balanced approach is key here, right?
I think so.
Recognizing that ABA can be helpful for some individuals, but also being aware of its limitations and potential downsides.
Absolutely.
And making sure that any treatment plan is tailored to the individual needs of the child.
And that it prioritizes their well-being and respects their autonomy.
Okay, so we've talked about ABA, but what about other approaches to autism treatment?
Well, Bogdashina emphasizes that a holistic approach is often the most effective.
What does that look like in practice?
It means addressing the whole child,
Yeah.
not just focusing on specific behaviors.
Okay.
This might involve things like sensory integration therapy to help with sensory processing issues,
Right.
dietary interventions to address any food sensitivities or nutritional deficiencies,
Yeah.
and speech therapy to help with communication skills.
So it's about creating a comprehensive plan that takes into account all aspects of the child's development and well-being.
Exactly. And it's also about recognizing that parents are essential partners in this process.
I imagine they have a lot of valuable insights to offer.
They do.
They know their children better than anyone else.
And Bogdashina is a strong advocate for parental involvement in treatment decisions.
That's great to hear.
She believes that parents are experts on their own children
Mm-hmm.
and that their insights are invaluable for developing effective treatment plans.
That makes a lot of sense.
So it's not just about professionals dictating what should happen.
Right.
It's about a collaborative process where parents and professionals work together
Mm-hmm.
to create a plan that's truly in the best interests of the child.
I love that. It's about recognizing that everyone has something valuable to contribute to the conversation.
Yeah.
And that working together is the best way to truly support autistic individuals.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not about trying to fix autistic individuals
Right.
or force them to conform to a neurotypical standard.
No.
It's about helping them thrive
Okay.
and reach their full potential in a world that values and embraces their differences.
Now that leads us perfectly into our next perspective.
Yeah.
The autistic voice itself. It's time to shift the focus from what others say about autism to what autistic individuals have to say themselves.
Yeah.
So let's dive into that perspective next.
Sounds good.
So now we're shifting gears to hear directly from autistic individuals.
Okay.
I'm really excited about this part of our deep dive
Right.
because I think it's crucial to move beyond simply talking about autism
Mm-hmm.
and really listen to the lived experiences of those who are actually autistic.
Right. You're absolutely right.
So what are some of the key themes or messages
Yeah.
that emerge from the autistic perspective?
Right.
What do autistic individuals want us to understand?
One of the most powerful messages I encountered in the book
Okay.
comes from Jim Sinclair, an autistic author,
Uh-huh.
who famously said, "The tragedy is not that we're here, but that your world has no place for us to be."
Wow, that quote really makes you stop and think.
Yeah.
It's not about wishing autistic individuals were different,
Right.
but about creating a world that values and welcomes them as they are. Exactly. It challenges us to question our assumptions about what constitutes a good or successful life. And it pushes us to create a world where autistic individuals can thrive on their own terms,
Yeah.
not on terms dictated by neurotypical norms.
Exactly.
That makes me think about the whole debate over whether autism is a disability
Right.
or simply a different way of being.
Yeah.
I know Simon Baron-Cohen, a prominent autism researcher,
Uh-huh.
argues that high-functioning autism might be better understood as a different cognitive style, not a deficit.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
It reframes the conversation
Okay.
and moves away from this idea that autism needs to be fixed.
You're right.
Instead, it encourages us to appreciate the strengths and unique perspectives
Okay.
that autistic individuals bring to the table.
Like what?
Things like their incredible attention to detail,
Right.
their passion for patterns and systems,
Okay.
and their often refreshingly honest and direct communication style.
Those are all qualities that our society could benefit from, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, yeah.
What if we actually placed more value on those autistic strengths?
What a thought-provoking question. It challenges us to rethink our definitions of success and consider the potential contributions of those who think and experience the world differently. We might be surprised by what we discover.
I'm also curious about how autistic individuals feel about the whole idea of cure
Right.
that often dominates the conversation around autism.
Well, Bogdashina highlights a point of contention here.
Okay.
She notes that many autistic individuals are actually quite frustrated by this focus on cure.
Right.
They don't want to be fixed
Mm-hmm.
or molded into something they're not.
Okay.
They want to be understood and accepted for who they are.
That makes perfect sense. It must be incredibly disheartening to feel like your way of being is fundamentally wrong,
It is.
especially when that message comes from those who claim to be advocating for you.
Exactly. And Bogdashina even mentions instances where autistic individuals have been dismissed
Really?
by some parents
Oh, wow.
for not being autistic enough,
No, that's so sad.
which is really unfortunate.
Yeah.
It highlights the importance of truly listening to artistic voices,
Mhm.
even when they challenge our preconceived notions and respecting their perspectives.
I wonder if those parents feel pressure from society to have their child conform to certain expectations.
Possibly?
Maybe they haven't fully grasped the idea that neurodiversity is something to be celebrated, not feared.
That's a really insightful observation,
Mhm.
and it speaks to the broader need for societal change.
Right.
We need to move away from this idea that there's only one right way to be
Okay.
and create a world where difference is embraced and valued.
Okay, so we've heard from parents
Right.
and from artistic individuals themselves.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious to explore the perspective of the professionals who work with autistic individuals. They're on the front lines, so to speak, of diagnosis, treatment, and research.
Hmm.
And their views on autism have a profound impact on the lives of autistic people and their families.
That's right, and those views can vary dramatically.
Oh, okay.
From those who are incredibly insightful and compassionate
Right.
to, unfortunately, those who are still clinging to outdated and potentially harmful ideas.
That leads me back to that disturbing example you mentioned earlier
Okay.
about the provision for autistic teenagers where structure was deemed unnecessary.
Right.
It's shocking to think that someone in a position of authority would have such a limited understanding of autism.
I agree. And it underscores the fact that not all professionals are created equal,
Mm-hmm.
and the quality of care can vary significantly.
Right.
Bogdashina stresses the importance of ongoing training
Okay.
and support for professionals
Uh-huh.
to ensure that they're equipped with the latest knowledge and best practices.
It sounds like there's a real need to bridge the gap between research and practice
There is.
and make sure that those working directly with autistic individuals are receiving adequate training and supervision.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they also need to be open to learning from autistic individuals themselves.
Oh, interesting.
After all, who better to understand the autistic experience than autistic people?
Right.
There's a growing movement within the autism community to involve autistic individuals in research and advocacy.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's a really positive development.
I completely agree. It makes sense to include the voices of those most affected by the issues being studied.
Yeah.
It brings us back to that idea of collaboration and shared expertise.
Right. It's about recognizing that everyone has something valuable to contribute to the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and that working together is the best way to create a more inclusive and understanding world for autistic individuals.
So we've explored the perspectives of parents, autistic individuals, and professionals.
We have.
And one thing that stands out to me is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to understanding or supporting autism. It's a complex and multifaceted spectrum,
It is.
and each individual's experience is unique.
That's a really insightful observation.
Okay, so where do we go from here?
Well, it leads us perfectly to the next part of our deep dive, where we'll explore some of the theories that attempt to explain autism.
Okay.
These theories offer valuable insights into the workings of the autistic mind. But it's important to remember that no single theory can fully capture the complexity of autism.
That's a great segue into the next part of our discussion. I'm fascinated by these different theories, and I'm eager to learn more about how they can help us understand autism. So we've heard from parents, autistic individuals, and professionals, and it's clear that understanding autism requires us to grapple with a lot of different perspectives.
It does.
Now let's add another layer to this exploration by diving into some of the theories that attempt to explain autism. What do you think?
Good idea. There's a whole landscape of theories out there,
Yeah.
each trying to shed light on this complex condition. Some, like that old refrigerator mother theory, have thankfully been debunked.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that one, blaming mothers for their children's autism. Terrible idea.
Completely unfounded.
Yeah.
Thankfully, research has moved on from those harmful misconceptions. Now, we have theories that have stood the test of time
Okay.
and continue to shape how we understand autism.
Right.
One that comes up a lot, and that Bogdashina discusses in detail, is theory of mind, or TOM.
Okay, I've heard of Tom.
You have.
It has something to do with understanding other people's perspectives.
Yeah, excellent. Theory of mind suggests that autistic individuals might have difficulty grasping that other people have their own thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that are separate from their own. It's like they have trouble imagining what's going on inside someone else's head.
That makes sense, but I also remember reading that even neurotypical children don't fully develop Tom until around age 4.
Right.
And we know signs of autism often appear much earlier, so
Yeah.
it can't be the whole story, can it?
You're right to be cautious about viewing any single theory as the definitive explanation for autism. While Tom can be helpful in understanding certain social challenges associated with autism,
Okay.
it's not a root cause.
So how is Tom useful then?
Think of it as a lens through which we can view certain interactions.
Okay.
For example, if an autistic person doesn't seem to react appropriately to someone else's distress, it might be because they're having trouble understanding that the other person is feeling sad or upset.
Mm-hmm.
Tom can help us interpret those moments of social awkwardness
Right.
or difficulty understanding unspoken cues.
So a tool for understanding behavior, but not the cause of the behavior itself.
Precisely. And as I said, there are other theories that add to the picture.
Okay.
There's weak central coherence theory, which suggests that autistic individuals tend to focus on details rather than the bigger picture.
Oh, that's interesting. It makes me think of the incredible attention to detail and the ability to hyper-focus on specific interests that many autistic people have. Almost like they can zoom in on one particular aspect of something and block out everything else.
Exactly. Imagine it like this. A neurotypical person might look at a forest and see a collection of trees.
Right.
But someone with a strong tendency for weak central coherence might focus on the intricate details of a single leaf or the pattern of bark on one tree.
That's a great analogy. It helps me visualize how this theory might play out in real life. What about sensory perceptual theory? I know that has to do with how autistic individuals process sensory information.
Yes, and this one is crucial because it highlights just how varied the sensory experience of autism can be. It's not just about hypersensitivity to certain sights, sounds, or textures. It can also involve hyposensitivity, where someone might seem unresponsive to pain or temperature changes.
So for some people, it's like their senses are turned up way too high, and for others, they're almost muted.
That's a good way to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a radio where all the stations are playing at once. That's what sensory overload can feel like for some autistic individuals. For others, it might be like trying to listen to a faint whisper in a noisy room. They're struggling to pick up on the sensory information that's important to them.
This makes it so clear why there's no one-size-fits-all approach to understanding or supporting autism. Each individual's experience is going to be shaped by a combination of these different factors, right?
Absolutely, and that's why it's so important for professionals to have a deep understanding of these various theories, but also to go beyond the theories and truly listen to the individual experiences of autistic people.
Bogdashina emphasizes that what works for one person might be completely ineffective or even harmful for another. It's about individualized care, recognizing that everyone's needs are different.
Precisely. And this brings us back to that vital partnership between parents, autistic individuals, and professionals. We need to work together, share our knowledge, and be open to learning from each other.
This deep dive has been such a fascinating exploration. I feel like I have a much better understanding of the complexities of autism, but I also realize that there's still so much to learn. What do you think is the most important takeaway for our listeners?
I think the key is to approach autism with curiosity, compassion, and a willingness to challenge our preconceived notions. We need to move away from the idea that there's one right way to be and embrace neurodiversity in all its forms.
And to remember that autistic individuals are not problems to be solved, but people with unique strengths, talents, and perspectives to share. If we can create a world where those differences are valued, imagine the possibilities.
What a wonderful thought to leave our listeners with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of autism. We hope it sparked your curiosity and encouraged you to continue learning and engaging with this ever-evolving field.
And that's it for this deep dive. See you next time.